I kid you not. This HOA lady was literally standing next to my red truck in my own driveway, jamming something into the lock like she was trying to hotwire it. I froze, thinking, is this real life? Is she seriously breaking into my truck in broad daylight? When I called her out, she called 911 on me for standing near my own vehicle. You can guess how that went. But the twist at the end? Honestly, it was better than finding a $20 bill in an old pair of jeans. If you've ever clashed with a control freak HOA, drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. You're watching STORIESOFQA, and this one gets wild. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming from a mile away. Introduction. My name's Jared Doyle. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a mobile architecture model builder. It sounds fancy, but basically, I build small-scale models of buildings and developments that architects use to show clients what their projects will look like. The cool part is, I've got my truck set up as a portable studio. I can drive to a client's office and build their model right there on the spot. It's got drafting tables, a 3D printer, all my tools, everything I need to turn blueprints into miniature reality. I remember the day I bought that truck like it was yesterday. I had just landed my first big contract, a $50,000 model for a downtown shopping complex. I walked into that dealership feeling like I could conquer the world. The salesman tried to steer me towards some boring white commercial van, but when I saw that bright red beauty sitting on the lot, I knew it was meant to be mine. I spent my first night in that truck building a scale model of the dealership where I'd bought it, just because I could. That truck wasn't just transportation. It was my independence, my mobile office, my pride and joy. And yeah, it's bright red. Not fire engine red, not cherry red, just a nice normal red color that apparently offended one very particular neighbor to her core. The neighbor. That neighbor was Diane Carrington, 52 years old, and the HOA president for 8 years running. She used to work as a county courthouse clerk, which explains why she lives and breathes rules and paperwork like some people need coffee to function. Her personal motto was, "Standards are the spine of society," and she would repeat it to anyone who'd listen, always with a righteous tone like she was quoting the Constitution. From day one, she saw my truck as a massive stain on her perfect little neighborhood vision. I started noticing her watching me through her blinds whenever I'd load or unload equipment. At first, I thought it was just curiosity, but after catching her peering out for the third time in 1 week, I realized something deeper was going on. The first warning. It all started about 3 weeks before the incident. I got a yellow warning letter in my mailbox about the inappropriate color of my vehicle that didn't comply with neighborhood standards. I laughed out loud when I read it. I mean, who has time to worry about stuff like that? I tossed it in the trash right in front of my neighbor and said something like, just some bored old folks with nothing better to do. Yeah, I know. Probably not my smartest move. Week 2, another letter showed up with a $15 fine attached. I ignored it completely. Didn't even bother reading the whole thing. I remember letting it blow away in the wind when I was getting my mail, which now seems incredibly stupid. But back then, I thought it would go away if I didn't feed into it. Week 3 brought a third letter with a $50 fine and threats about legal action if I didn't comply. Still, I didn't take it seriously. Legal action over a truck color? Ridiculous. But I wasn't dealing with normal logic. Diane wasn't someone to mess with. The incident. Then, last Tuesday morning, everything went completely insane. I stepped outside around 7:30 to grab my travel coffee mug from the truck's mini fridge. I froze. There was Diane, standing next to my driver's side door, holding what looked like a thin metal tool, trying to stick it into my door lock. She was actually trying to break into my truck in broad daylight in my own driveway. I pulled out my phone and started recording. My heart was racing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I muttered something under my breath like, "It's like Real Housewives meets true crime." Diane quickly spun around, and her face went from surprise to furious in half a second. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, like I didn't belong in my own driveway. Mrs. Carrington," I said, trying to stay calm. "What exactly are you doing to my truck? Did the HOA start offering free locksmith services? Or should I be calling the police right now?" She rambled about vehicle inspections and neighborhood standards, even pulled out some official-looking paper that I'm pretty sure she just printed at home. "Standards are the spine of society, Mr. Doyle," she said with that same righteous tone. I kept recording every word, every ridiculous excuse she threw at me. But instead of getting into a shouting match, I stayed calm and kept filming. The whole situation was escalating, and I needed evidence. The 911 call. Then things took a bizarre turn. Diane pulled out her iPhone and called 911. Yes, she called emergency services on me for standing near my own truck in my own driveway. She told the dispatcher, "There's a man recording me without permission while I'm conducting official HOA business. He's being very threatening, and his vehicle looks suspicious." At this point, I thought the world had flipped upside down. Was I about to get tackled by the cops for doing absolutely nothing wrong? But instead of panic, I just kept filming, hoping the footage would clear things up when the police arrived. The twist. While Diane was on the phone with the dispatcher, I noticed a few strange things. She knew too much about my daily routine, like when I left for work and sometimes worked late in my truck. And she kept glancing at my front door security camera with a knowing look. After Diane stomped off, threatening that the police would handle it, I checked the security footage. My blood ran cold. The camera that usually pointed straight at my driveway had been repositioned to face the street. I was now left wondering, had Diane been messing with my security system all along? It felt like detective work, except the stakes were my livelihood and my home, not some fictional crime. The footage she showed me was like finding buried treasure. Her doorbell camera had caught everything that night around 2 a.m. A dark blue pickup truck, not red like mine, had driven through the flower beds and knocked over the fence. The license plate was too blurry to read clearly, but I could make out the driver, a young guy wearing a baseball cap. But here's the part that really blew my mind. I also found an HOA maintenance log that showed someone had accessed the community's security camera system that same night to perform routine updates. Marcus had a contact in the HOA tech committee. We weren't supposed to have this information, but desperate times call for desperate measures. The person who signed in was A. Carrington, Austin Carrington, Diane's 19-year-old nephew, who worked part-time doing IT for the HOA. Suddenly, everything made perfect sense. I felt sick to my stomach, but also vindicated. It wasn't just her. It was a network, an HOA crime ring operating right under everyone's noses. Austin had access to the camera systems, which explained how my home security camera had been redirected that morning. He could delete footage, plant evidence, and cover his tracks because he had the keys to the digital kingdom. He drove a blue pickup truck that matched the one in the doorbell footage. And Diane had inside help for her entire harassment campaign. Someone with technical skills who could make evidence disappear and create false trails leading back to me. That time the camera glitched out for 30 minutes last month, Austin was working that day. All those little technical malfunctions that I'd attributed to bad luck or aging equipment suddenly made sense. I spent the next 2 days collecting every piece of proof I could find. Screenshots of the security log showing Austin's late-night access, my neighbor's doorbell footage showing the blue truck, my own security footage proving my truck never moved, and photos comparing my tire treads to the tracks at the scene. The evidence was overwhelming. I knew I had to be smart about how I used it. Marcus helped me organize everything into a coherent timeline that would be impossible to dispute. Staring at all that evidence, spread across my kitchen table, I realized this wasn't just about one crazy HOA president. I was up against a whole family conspiracy, and I had no idea how deep. The color drained from Diane's face like someone had pulled a plug. She lunged for Marcus' phone, screaming, "That's fake. You edited that. This is harassment." But it was too late. People pumping gas had started staring and pulling out their phones to record this middle-aged woman having a complete meltdown in public. One guy at Pump 5 shouted, "Yo, HOA Karen's going down," as 3 more phones turned to film the spectacle. Gas station staff were peeking from behind the counter, probably wondering if they should call security or just enjoy the show. "That's defamation. I'll sue you all," she screeched as Detective Miller stepped out from his unmarked car. "Diane Carrington," he announced calmly. "You're under arrest for filing false police reports, evidence tampering, property damage, and conspiracy to commit fraud." He started reading her rights while she continued screaming about lawsuits and harassment. But nobody was buying her victim act anymore. The charges were extensive. Multiple counts of filing false 911 reports, evidence tampering, property damage from the staged fence incident, fraud through fake violation notices, and conspiracy involving Austin in the scheme. The aftermath. Faced with the recording and potential criminal charges, Austin completely broke down and confessed everything when the cops picked him up later that day. He'd been helping Diane harass neighbors for over 2 years. They had staged property damage before to frame other residents. Diane had a whole systematic approach to driving out people she didn't like. And most of the violation notices she sent out were completely fake infractions she'd made up. Within hours, videos of Diane's arrest were all over local news and online communities. Someone had filmed her screaming at the gas pump and shared it around with the caption, "HOA Karen gets arrested for framing neighbor." The story even made the evening news. 6 months later, justice was finally served. Diane got 6 months in jail, a $5,000 fine, and 2 years of probation. Austin got 200 hours of community service and was banned from any HOA employment. Both were ordered to pay restitution to all their previous victims, including the Henderson family, who had been contacted and compensated for their damages from 3 years ago. I even drove out to their farmhouse to deliver the good news in person. When I knocked on their door and told them, "You were right, it was her. She won't hurt anyone again," the relief on their faces was worth every sleepless night I'd endured. The new HOA. The HOA held an emergency election, and Diane was removed from all positions. My elderly neighbor was elected as the new president, and one of her first acts was voiding all of Diane's bogus violation notices and implementing new rules requiring actual proof before any fines could be issued. My red truck was officially classified as a specialized professional vehicle and granted permanent exemption from color restrictions. 6 months later, our neighborhood is actually a pretty great place to live. The new HOA focuses on actual community improvement instead of harassing residents. Crime is down, community events are up, property values have increased by 12%, and the HOA actually helps residents instead of terrorizing them. Diane's house went up for sale after she got out of jail. And ironically, the new owners painted their house bright yellow. Nobody complained. My truck is still bright red, still parked in my driveway, and still helping me build amazing architectural models for clients all over the county. I won. But every time I pass that broken fence, I still double-check the locks on my truck. And whenever new neighbors move in and ask about the red truck guy who took down the crazy HOA lady, I just smile and tell them the whole story. Because sometimes David really does beat Goliath, especially when Goliath records their own confession and hands you the evidence on a silver platter. Moral of the story: bullies count on people being too intimidated or too tired to fight back. But sometimes, you have to stand your ground, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. If you've stuck with me till the end, thanks for being here. Hit like if this gave you a little hope or a laugh. And feel free to drop your own HOA horror stories in the comments. And hey, if you want to help me keep these stories coming, tapping that thanks button under the video goes a long way. I'm not saying this will be the last wild thing to happen in my driveway, but until then, take care, and I'll see you next time on STORIESOFQA.